I'm now confident in my ability to generate something out of nothing, which is the best position to be in because it gives you more confidence and allows you to take on a higher risk profile.
Yeah, you are a veteran podcaster. You've been doing it for a few years. I'd like to get into it. And, well, first, Travis, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Aaron. I appreciate it, dude. It's been a while.
And thank you for making sure I hit the record button.
Yeah. Usually they're better when they're recorded. Yeah, I've found that to be the case.
Of course, I've accidentally turned my own camera off. I had to cancel two shows yesterday because my microphone cable had actually melted.
Oh no.
I don't know. I think what happened was I've got toddlers and they're like little gremlins. They come in here and they do really creative stuff to the equipment.
Yeah.
So now,
how old are the toddlers?
I told you, I was looking through everything, the computer, the dials on the microphone. I'm like, what is going on here? And then I touched the cable and almost got a shock. I'm like, what the heck is going on there?
How old are they?
And I think also I can feel the autumn angle of the sun coming right through the window onto my forehead.
You do that. Only when you do that. It's fine right now. You're good right now.
If I lean back, and that's all the more reason to invest in better equipment and a secure bunker in the back of my house.
That's fair. Yeah. Or really just a producer, somebody who can check all.
Yeah, exactly.
For you.
Or all of the above.
Yeah.
So Travis, when we first spoke, I was a guest on your podcast, but it was a podcast of a different name.
Yeah.
It was Build Your Network.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So for actually, I think over 5 years, the show was called Build Your Network. Is very niche specific, very networking focused. And now what we really wanted to do was I honestly, man, I just got bored with the show, and it brought me to this like big conclusion for like podcasters, for creators, anybody who's pursuing something that's like a really long-term goal. The conclusion that I came to was do whatever is going to allow you to do it longer than anybody else. And I was always under the, because I'm breaking the rules of podcasting right now. Like I didn't niche down. I didn't, create for this one person in mind, blah, blah, blah. And I'm breaking a lot of those rules, but I'm also having a lot more fun with it again. And in some cases, that actually is the better metric for success than being pigeonholed into creating something that you don't really want to create just because it works. And I think that there's a lot of creators out there now, especially that I'm having conversations with, that, they're on their 3rd year, 4th year, or 8th year of creating, and it's their full-time thing. And maybe they make $6, $7, $8, $12,000 a month from their YouTube channel or for their podcast or whatever. But they know that when they start switching up the topic that they talk about and start talking about stuff that they care about again, because they're also kind of bored with their topic, they notice that their audience starts going down, their viewership starts going down, their monetization starts going down, like everything they worked on starts going down. And so they just are forced to continue putting out content that they don't really care about anymore, just because that's what feeds the algorithm the best. And I just kind of made a decision at the beginning or at the end of beginning of this year, that I was not going to be that guy, and that like the reason that I create isn't just to make money, it's because I enjoy it. And if it starts being a time suck and starts taking away energy from me and making me feel negative and stuff like that, then eventually I'm just going to quit. And the way to guarantee that you're going to be a failure as a creator is to quit. So sometimes like the metric that you're solving for shouldn't be, is this gaining traction? Am I, is the audience loving this type of a thing? Sometimes it should be like, do I love this? And will I continue creating this for years to come? Because sometimes like, you might punt the audience 4 years down the road if you're doing that type of a model. But if you really enjoy it, you're going to continue doing it. So that became the metric that was more important for me, and really the kind of driving force behind the entire rebrand of the show.
Well, so tell me, how did you rebrand from Build Your Network to your current podcast? Well, the iteration it's in now, the evolution. This niche is Travis Makes Friends. Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it's a 180 pivot.
Correct. It was just more
took a course correction.
Yeah, exactly. Course correction is a great way to say it. It's just more broad. It's just like we were super narrow for a while, and now we can go really broad. So, for most of Build Your Network, it was mostly talking to business leaders, entrepreneurs, authors, stuff like that. Now, since the rebrand, we've had a lot of athletes on the show. We've had a lot of comedians on the show, entertainers, influencers, like just some other people with an eclectic mixture of expertise and knowledge that isn't necessarily all about like how to go network with people. It's more just like the show's called Travis Makes Friends because it's more just like documenting my journey of making friends with people who I find interesting, and then people can kind of just follow along with that, for the ride, so to speak.
That sounds fantastic. And I think that's one of the best benefits of having your own podcast is that you get to talk to. It's a way in to talking to some people who would otherwise be inaccessible.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the number one thing that I tell people when I get asked, should everyone start a podcast or should I start a podcast or whatever? The answer I always come back with is that was exactly what you just said. It even if you never get millions of downloads or it never becomes your full-time thing or you never become the next Joe Rogan or whatever, arbitrary metric that you've defined as success for you, even if that doesn't happen, if you have an interview show, by nature of having the show, you will improve several things about your life, including the relationships that you have and like the depth and width of those relationships. Like the number of people that you know, but also the number of interesting people that you know, and also the number of conversations that you have with people that can help change your perspective and your opinion on things and make you and turn you into a better version of yourself. And, I think one of the most underrated personal development activities is just conversations with people that are smarter than you or have figured something out that you haven't figured out, or somebody who disagrees with you. Like just having a conversation with somebody, open conversation where you come prepared with questions that you're curious about. Mm-hmm. Those conversations can lead to you becoming a better version of yourself without ever picking up a book or listening to somebody else's show. It's just the fact that you're having the conversations, and that conversations like that, they just don't happen in normal day-to-day life, typically for most people, especially the more disconnected we get, right? Like people aren't going into the office. They're working from home from Zoom. There's so many things that make us more disconnected. And if you're not intentionally connecting and conversing with intelligent people who you can rub your ideas up against, then how do you know if your ideas are correct? How do you know if you're making any headway towards your goals? Like there's just a lot of really great benefit from having intelligent, long form conversation with, people who have your respect or admiration, or even some people who don't, who you ardently disagree with, and want to try to understand their perspective. There's so much good that comes from that. So just having the podcast by itself will, I think, make you a better individual, better at whatever it is that you do, especially if whatever it is you do, meaning like if you're a marketer and you interview expert marketers once a week for 3 years, you can't help but improve. It's going to be a byproduct of the conversations you have and the things that you're learning in those conversations. So it makes you a better version of whatever you are, plus a better version of yourself completely, because you're learning from people, but also you're learning really translatable skills, soft skills like communication, asking good questions, having empathy, active listening. All of those things are really valuable in multiple arenas, not just having a podcast. So all of these other reasons are reasons to have a show. And then it's kind of the cherry on top is like, if I do this enough reps over enough time and people find it and they like it, it could actually turn into a significant income stream. And then I get to make a living doing all of these things. So that's why I always tell people like, yeah, I think you should start a podcast, because it doesn't, even if you're not going to become the next, again, Joe Rogan, there's so many other benefits to doing it that I think you'll find, for anybody for people that are like really intellectually curious, or they like to question things, or they're kind of against the status quo type people. I think it can be extremely beneficial.
You touched on it there, and it's about learning, growing, and we do hold on to our beliefs. We take a camp, and we plant our flag in our beliefs because that's part of our identity. And I think, is at least for me, it's having a podcast, being a host, and talking to people with different views, different values, different beliefs. I've had to practice my humility. I've had to being maintain that curiosity, and of course, being the active listener, being able to respond and maybe push back a little bit. But it's about the guest, and it's about learning.
Mm-hmm.
And you just like you said, Joe Rogan's a great example. He pushes back, but he's always curious.
Yes.
He has all sorts of people on that he agrees with, but even more so, he has lots of people on that he disagrees with.
Yes.
And he's very curious.
Right.
I love listening to that guy. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a better forum, man. Like it's a better way to work through difficult ideas than by watching this news anchor who is clearly biased because the people paying their paycheck have an agenda that they're trying to push. And then they bring somebody on with whom they disagree, but that person has a minute and a half of airtime to try to flesh out a concept that's extremely difficult to flesh out in an hour, let alone a minute and a half before the next commercial break. And then it always ends with the host, doing some sort of verbal slam dunk that just that makes their audience feel good so that they can share something on social media. Like, it doesn't lead to any sort of thought challenging, doesn't lead to any sort of opinion changing, perspective shifting. It doesn't lead to any of that. It's a machine that is built to produce income for shareholders. And the best way they know how to do that is through clickbaity titles, through negativity bias. That's why 78% or something, like large percentage, I forget the exact number, large percentage of news headlines are written negatively, because they know that it's going to get more clicks, and ultimately they need clicks so they can sell advertisers, so they can make more money, so that their shareholders are happy. It's like it's not a real forum through which to work on like difficult conversations or to get intelligent people to spit out ideas and have those ideas, be the things that are fighting, not the people. It's just, and what's so great about Rogan and some of these other shows that have been popping up lately is that they allow for that. They allow for intelligent people to come on, even though they may disagree, and they allow the ideas to be alive. And the ideas are what fight each other. And then the people listening, because guess what? We all get to be free-thinking, critical-thinking adults. We don't have to be told what's exactly correct and what's exactly incorrect. We can get information, disseminate that information, and decide for ourselves whether or not we believe that piece of information, or whether or not we think that idea as a whole is a good idea or a bad idea. And the only way that we're going to find what the correct ideas are is to rub them against incorrect ideas, and then that's how they kind of win out in the end. But if you don't ever give anybody the chance to make that happen, then that's how we end up with these like crazy polarizing sides of the aisle where there's no productivity that comes from that, and it's only more divisiveness, and it's only more hatred, and it's only more fear mongering, and it's only bad for anybody who engages in either side of that argument. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, I think podcasting's just super great forum for that, and I love guys like Rogan who are kind of leading the way and setting the example, because he could have easily sold out at some point. He never did, and that's one thing I greatly appreciate as a fan and listener, but also respect and admire about him as a person. It's like he doesn't get caught up in the comments, he doesn't get caught up in all the BS that's said about him. He's always done what he's done. I like having conversations with people I find interesting, and he just does that. And if you want to listen, great. If you don't want to listen, great. If you want to talk crap, great. If you don't want to talk crap, great. I don't care. I'm going to do what I'm going to do, regardless of how many people are in his ear probably telling him you shouldn't be giving that person a platform. You shouldn't be giving this person a platform. You shouldn't be talking to that person. You should have this person on instead. And he just says, okay, cool. well, you can do that on your podcast, but as long as this is the Joe Rogan Experience, I'm just going to do what I want to do, because like that's why I started this thing to begin with. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately, I think, what led to the rabid fan base, in addition to things like timing and some name recognition already, and podcast listenership increasing significantly during the time that he was creating more than anybody else was creating. There's a lot of other factors, but like I think one of the main ones is basically that. It's just like he just stuck with his guns, and he didn't sell out. He didn't do like celebrity chasing. You know what I mean? He just brings on the guy who runs the barbecue joint and asks him how to like cook brisket really well, and Elon Musk the next episode, and bring on a presidential candidate. You know what I mean? Like he just does what he wants, and that's what I think is so cool about what he's been able to build.
I think you hit the point on the head right there, was that there are plenty of platforms out there that will feed that the echo chamber effect. If you want to listen to only one aspect of what you believe in, then there are plenty of podcasts. There are different platforms for you to listen to. Yep, there's also plenty of ways that you can be challenged.
Yes.
Of course, Rogan's is a great example. And if you want, the thing is that you can, the easiest way to not be offended is just don't be offended. And the easiest way to not be canceled is be uncancelable.
Yeah.
If you just, you market to whomever you want.
Correct.
Because of course, you can define who you want to talk to and who you want to talk with, and it's okay.
Yeah.
If you don't be afraid. It was like you said, that shotgun effect. You're not niching down. Well, it's the same with your avatar, right? Mm-hmm. You could if you're talking to everybody, you're talking to nobody,
right?
And then when you're talking to everybody, everybody's opinions count, even the ones that hate what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you're talking to a specific, clientele, a certain audience, a specific audience, then you talk to them, and everybody else's noise is just noise.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and that's the nice thing about being somewhat secure in yourself. That's one of the side effects of growing up and maturing, is that you begin to care less about what other people think, and you begin to care more about what you and the people that are very, very close to you think. And as long as you know that, like it's easy to buy into all the BS that people talk about you when you actually believe some of it. You know what I'm saying? Like, but if you're secure and confident in yourself, and you know that those things aren't true to your core, because you know that's not the type of person that you are, because you work to not be that type of a person, and the people that are closest to you and who love you the most and spend the most time with you also know all of that, then what does it matter that some, random whiner on the other side of the country, or maybe the world, has some, BS to spew about you online? It's just like, okay, spew away. You know what I mean? Like, go for it. I don't know what this gives you, but it doesn't do anything to me at this point. It's a lot easier said than done, I think. But some people like Rogan who are kind of thrust into this crazy level of celebrity and fame. That's really the only option, because the alternative to that is to care way too much about what everybody thinks and be lost in the spiral of mental health issues that come along with trying to make everybody happy. So that's why I just love seeing people like him who are just like, nah, I'll just do my own thing.
It's after having people try to blow you up or try to shoot you, it's like Fight Club, where after a night of Fight Club, everything else has the volume just turned down.
Yeah.
I like how somebody put it. It was probably on a meme I read, but other people, what other people think about you is none of your business.
None of your business. Yeah, that's right. Right.
So I don't care what some people's opinions are, and I do care about what some other people's opinions are, because those are the people I care about.
Sure.
Right. So those are the people I talk to.
Yeah, exactly. That should be the litmus test. It's like, most people aren't going to be there on my by my deathbed. Most people aren't going to be there at my funeral. It's like the ones who are the only ones that it's worth like considering their opinions. And even then you shouldn't give like full weight to them as much as you should care about your opinion of yourself. And that's really where I think the rubber meets the road for most people, man. I just think a lot of people are not willing to admit that their opinion of themselves is actually a lower opinion. And, due to some sort of mistrust in themselves, they can't keep the promises that they make to themselves, or they lack discipline or focus, or there's some sort of like underlying issue there. And that's why they have to rely on the constant affirmations from other people. And they want to know that everything they're doing is right, because they're just not confident that what they're doing is right. And they're insecure about their own feelings towards themselves. And then that's when it turns into that negativity spiral real quick, though, because as soon as you start reading some negative stuff and you actually believe some of that stuff to be true about yourself, that's when you start really taking a downgrade on your mental health, I think.
We're all on a different journey. We're all in a different place on that journey.
Yes.
Yeah. So realizing that somebody else's opinion is from a filter. It's from their perspective on their journey. It definitely takes a bit of self-actualization to learn that there are other filters, other frame of mind, other beliefs beyond your own perspective. So you take everything with a grain of salt.
Yes.
And I want to ask it, though, since you decided you were going to have these conversations with interesting people that you wanted to talk to, who is your audience? Do you have a specific avatar, or
that's something that we're working through right now, Aaron. I when I did it, I did not have that. It was literally just like, I am about to quit podcasting, so I need to change course or I will be done. And so when I did that, it was mainly just for me. So now I'm going to get back into the world of like, okay, now that I've made the switch, now that my attitude toward my show is improved, again, now it's more like, okay, who are we really creating this for, and what can we really make sure that they get out of the episode? So now we're kind of really getting back into audience engagement for the first time really all year. So now, like, ask me that question again in like 3 to 6 months, and I'll probably have a much more detailed answer for you.
Well, I know even in Build Your Network, you were talking to some big names, and you're still talking. Obviously, you do a good job at booking some great guests, and then of course you're having success. So you're making money at podcasting. You're also, with your newsletter and YouTube, you're also teaching others how to book great guests, make a great podcast, put out good content. Is that the direction you're going to go with, like podcast education?
Yes. Yeah. So on my podcast in particular, I probably won't do that. But yeah, we do have a program now with my friend Chris Van Vliet, who's a bigger creator than I am. He talks more creator stuff. I talk more business stuff. And then we're bringing in a third partner, actually, who is like a producer who will be doing a lot more of the like editing, production, and software and tools and like all that kind of stuff. So trying to cover multiple facets of being a creator inside of that community. But yeah, that's fulltimecreator.co. And essentially the idea is like, we're trying to help people become a full-time creator if that's what they want to do. But that's like a completely separate program. And we'll likely start a different YouTube channel for that. But right now it's basically just, we have a mastermind group. We meet once a week and we do Q&A. We bring in expert friends of ours. And it's super cheap. It's like $97 a month, I think, right now. So we provide a ton of value in that group, and that's kind of where I get that outlet to help other creators. But for my podcast specifically, I probably won't cover that type of stuff.
Is that mastermind within the Guestio platform, or is that something separate? Tell me about Guestio.
Yeah, it's completely separate. So Guestio is more like a software tool and agency that helps guests get booked on podcasts and helps shows book better guests. So it's like a connection platform and then a connections concierge on the back end in the agency work that we do. So we'll represent, authors or business owners or entrepreneurs or whatever, and we'll go get them booked on top rated podcasts to help them grow their brand, get more leads, sales, credibility, backlinks, better SEO, all that kind of stuff.
Well, certainly sounds like all of this is related.
Yeah.
And you've definitely developed some expertise in the area. What is it that you hope to give to the audience? What are you trying to teach or bring out with your guests? Or is it really a simple curiosity with each guest?
It really is more curiosity based. The goal is, it's still more of an educational show, and really the goal is to sit down with people who have had an unconventional path to success and reverse engineer what it took to get them there, so that other people can find that it's possible for themselves. And I find oftentimes, man, it's not really about whether or not somebody is capable of doing something, it's whether or not they believe they're capable of doing something. And the more evidence that you can give them that other people have figured it out from their position or worse, the more likely they are to believe that it's possible for them, and the more likely they are to take that first step. So I like talking to people who've found a way to be successful doing something that, their career counselors and parents and teachers and society and professors and everybody probably told them that it wasn't going to work out, or they shouldn't do that, or that's not safe, or don't do this, or don't do that. And they went and did it anyway, and they figured out a path to making it successful for themselves. I just really enjoy talking with people like that, and then kind of breaking down the journey and then giving that information to the audience in a way that makes them go, oh man, well, if so-and-so did that thing, what's preventing me from doing this thing that I've been thinking about for the last 4 years, but I can't, get the courage to quit my full-time job to pursue it full-time, or whatever the case is. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to see people live the life that they want to live rather than live the life that was thrust upon them by others. And I think ultimately the world would be a better place in general if that were the case, because, like we've all experienced kind of like that mall cop kind of a personality, right? The people who they have a little bit of power and then they abuse that power because they feel so powerless in every other area of their life. And those people live miserable lives. And I'm not trying to say that anybody with a job is that way. That is not at all what I'm trying to say. I never tell people what they should want. I just try to help people figure out what they do want and actually go after it, even if it's not something that's traditionally what others told them they should want. That's all I'm saying. So if you want to be a mall cop, great, be a mall cop. Like, I'm not vilifying any sort of job or position in particular, just using it as an example, because that's the type of personality that I'm talking about, is somebody who lacks control in other areas of life. So they objectively make other people's lives more miserable because they're in charge of something, and they want other people to be just as miserable as they do, because misery loves company. And so that's what I'm saying, is I think the world would be a better place if more people pursued their dreams, pursued something that, even if it's not like, a passion or whatever, because Mike Rowe talks a lot about that, and I appreciate Mike Rowe's work a lot. He talks a lot about, like, it doesn't have to be a passion. He's like, there's a lot of people that I met on dirty jobs that are making great money, living great lives, super happy, and they're, working on sewage lines or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if they have a $14 million business that gives them all the freedom in the world to travel and be with their family and do the things that they love, and they don't really care that what they do isn't like their quote unquote passion. So I'm not even saying like follow your passion or whatever. I'm just saying follow the path that makes the most sense for you to follow, even if it's scary, even if it's a big risk, and even if there's other people in your life that are telling you that you shouldn't. Like, I just want to see more people do that thing, because when more people take a step to do that thing, I think the world becomes better. And I think that you treat people around you differently if you're living inside of that world. I think that you're happier. I think you're more fulfilled. And frankly, I think that you'll be more fulfilled in the pursuit of that thing than you will be in the accomplishment of something else, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, well, we were talking about counselors and teachers telling you never amount to anything. I, on the other hand, I can't count how many times I was told, you have so much potential, which always sounded to me like, get off your ass. But it literally, just before this call, I just ended a call with Doc G, Jordan Grumet, the author of Taking Stock. Yeah. uh, hospice care doctor that went into a fire, financial independence, retire early education, and he was we talked had a whole conversation about it's not about the money, more about uh, reducing regret, taking that review of your life, and most of the time when people have those regrets, it's not about nobody ever says, I wish I'd taken more overtime hours. Their regrets are they didn't have, they didn't do something because they didn't have enough energy, or they didn't believe in themselves enough. They didn't have enough courage
Yeah.
to act. And really, the most fulfilling life is a life where you have self-actualization, that there's purpose behind it.
Correct.
You have an identity, and of course, social connection. And so you don't have to, you don't have to be a billionaire to have a happy, fulfilling, and regret-free life.
Correct.
You just gotta take some action towards achieving those goals,
Right.
making those connections, being a person you can be, and not waiting.
Yeah, man. That's why I think, the Stoics were onto something when they talked about contemplating their death frequently. Marcus Aurelius, if you read through the Meditations, there's so many, I guess, quote unquote, passages that are in there that are him contemplating death and his own death. And when you put the things that you're looking at as massive risks, the things that you were talking about that are like deathbed regrets that you didn't take action on, that you couldn't find the courage to take action on XYZ. Like when you look at it from the perspective of your deathbed, it seems so minuscule, because that courage usually isn't something that you faced in combat. That courage usually isn't, I might go to my death here. That courage usually is just trying to overcome the fear of potential embarrassment if you're going to fail at the thing that you're trying to succeed at. And that embarrassment that you're worried about is, again, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier, that embarrassment is with people with whom you don't even have a great relationship with, the people who are not in that room with you when you're on your deathbed, the people who won't make it to your funeral because they had a meeting they didn't want to cancel. Those are the people that you are fueling the greatest regrets of your life with, and using as a reason to not pursue the life that you're meant to live. And it is just something that is like, it just doesn't make sense as an operating manual to live life,
And having that courage is like being cancelable, right? You're worried about what others might think. So you don't have the courage to take that risk, to pursue those dreams, to step outside the that safe, cozy, fuzzy blanket of the 9 to 5 and the grind, because that's socially okay.
Correct. Yeah, that's the thing that's acceptable, But I love this Jim Carrey in his commencement address one time. I forget what university he was speaking to during their commencement ceremony, but he was, I think, the keynote speaker during that. And he said something about his dad wanting to be in comedy, and it struck a chord with me, and I've never forgotten it since then. And he basically said something along the lines of, my dad was a great comedian, or my dad was a funny man and could have been a great comedian, but he chose to be an accountant or something because it was the safe path. And he said 15 or 20 years into his career, he was let go from that safe job and forced to find some other way to provide for his family. And he said, I learned a lot of really valuable lessons from my dad, but that was probably the most valuable lesson, which is, you can fail at what you don't want. So why not take a chance on doing what you love? And that was like one of those things where even the safe path is not even the safe path, especially in 2023. It used to be a little bit different, where employers had some sense of loyalty to their workers, and the workers would work there for 50 years and then they would retire and get their pension. And it's like, that was a path at one point, That's no longer how the landscape of careers and jobs work anymore. Like, you need to look out for yourself and for your family, and hopefully you can find a company that will allow you to like pursue that vehicle if that's the path that you want to choose. Like I said, I'm not vilifying being an employee or working somewhere at the same place for 40 years. If that is truly what you want, I just find that most of the time it's not what people want. It just becomes the option that they choose because it, quote unquote, makes the most sense, or that's what my mom said was a good idea, or my career counselor told me I wasn't smart enough to start a business, so I should just be this employee forever. If that's the case, my entire show exists just to challenge those thought processes and get people to think a little bit differently and to think for themselves, to think critically, and to choose a path that's actually the path that they want to choose, not a path that other people set them on 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 25 years ago, because I just think people will be happier doing that.
Yeah, the work 40, 50 years and get that pension and then enjoy your life model is kind of broken. And there's no safe, like you said, there's no safe pursuit.
Correct.
Huge corporations go belly up. There's strikes, pandemics. And, think about like Enron, WorldCom.
Right.
I mean,
right.
They were huge and they were successful until they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
And pensions disappear, investment portfolios disappear.
Yeah. And
the one thing we can rely on are our own talents, our own abilities. We should always be growing and learning. And that's why, this country was built on small business, built on entrepreneurship. A town in the West was spread, and then you open a blacksmith shop, you open a dress shop, a general store. All entrepreneurs, all taking a risk. Something out on the prairie is not. It's a pretty risky pursuit.
Yes,
and so you don't know if this town's going to succeed. You don't know if your shop's going to succeed.
Exactly. The bottom line is that there's going to be risk in every direction. That's why I tell people, like, as an entrepreneur, it's almost it is inherently more risky, but it's almost the safer path, because I know that, like, if everything I'm working on now goes belly up tomorrow, I know that the skill sets that I've built will allow me to go do something again. Like, I know at the end of the day that I will not be dependent on some gatekeeper allowing me to work for them so that I can get a paycheck to provide for my family. I know that if it comes down to it, I can go make money. Like, I can find a way to generate revenue and income to make sure that my family, like, it's the whole, teach a man to fish versus give them a fish type of a thing. It's just that, some employees use their skills to fish for other people and only ever think about it that way. And they're dependent on finding somebody who will give them the opportunity to work for them so that they can make money. And it's just like, well, that to me seems actually more inherently risky. You know what I mean? Like, it's both of them are going to come with some risk, because at any point that employer could decide that you're no longer worth the money that they're paying you and they can fire you. And then you got to go find somebody else to give you that same chance. Whereas if that happens to me, if I lose everything, I know that I can go make a bunch of money back, because I know, I'm now confident in my ability to generate something out of nothing, which is the best position to be in, because it gives you more confidence and allows you to take on a higher risk profile. Like, that's why people don't like to risk things, Aaron, is this, that, like, especially when it comes to money, people don't like to risk money because they're not confident in their ability to replace the money once it's gone.
Money is a commodity. It's a resource. It's, in fact, touching back on that conversation I just had, just from his book, he said, money is like oxygen. You don't realize, you don't even care if you have too much. Mm-hmm. It's when you don't have enough. So wouldn't you want to produce enough oxygen, not having to worry about if somebody else tries to take it away? That's after I was injured from in the military, on deployment. I was thrust into fire not literally, well, literally too. But I meant financial independence, retire early, because I was literally retired from the military,
Yeah.
and I was given a disability pension, medical retirement, whatever you want to call it. So I get a paycheck. It's not going to make me rich, but it will pay the bills.
Yeah.
So I can survive for the rest of my life without having to work. But then I'm one, I'm never going to be rich. I'm never going to be able to, give my family what I want to give them on that income and provide for them the way I want to. But also, I'm beholden to a very, a government full of really stupid people.
That's putting it nicely, but yes, I get it.
So, government shutdowns or inflation or wherever, whatever bills are passed. I don't know. But, the Department of Veterans Affairs is a great place to give and take away budget money. So I didn't want to live the rest of my life, and have that oxygen being given to me by the government.
Yeah.
So I started an e-commerce site and started investing in real estate, and began public speaking and started a podcast and all these different streams of revenue.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about the government check anymore.
Right.
And you know what? The best part about that is how liberating it feels.
Well, and the best part about it to me, Aaron, is that like anybody looking at your situation would have totally understood if you just were just like, you know what, I'm just going to chill. I'll collect my disability and this is just my lot in life. And I just have to accept what was the cards that were dealt to me. But instead of doing that, you did everything that you were just saying, not to mention the ultras that you run and the mountains that you're climbing and like all these different things that you decided to do, even though it like everybody in your life would be like, yeah, totally understandable if you never want to do any of that, but like, that's what makes your story. So that's why I love chatting with you, because that's what makes your story so inspirational, is just that.
Not to turn this interview around.
Yeah.
I know dueling podcast hosts have a tendency to do that. But you know what? Then it comes right back to that question, then what?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, you can find that income, that comfortable income to retire and quit. Then what?
It happened. Now what? Yeah. Like,
so
we can acknowledge
something
that it
to pursue.
You can have sorrow that it happened, and you can, and I'm not just talking about what happened with you. I'm saying like anybody that's gone through some difficult stuff. It's just like you can acknowledge that it happened, and you can have some sorrow. You can have some mourning time. You can have some time to grieve. But then now what? Like, how long do you let it prevent you from doing anything else? How long do you use it as an excuse to not live the life that you want to live? How long, like, what's acceptable is, because it's not the rest of your life. You know what I mean? Like, the buck stops somewhere. You know what I mean? And probably this.
Well, you can use it as an excuse, or you can use it as a catalyst, right?
Yeah.
We were talking about that warm fuzzy blanket of protection, and I could sat back, put up my heels, and say, okay, I'm done.
Yep.
But I didn't want to use that as an excuse. I wanted to use the freedom to pursue some new challenges and lead a life of significance. And so turning it back to you with this podcast, the new evolution of the podcast, and Guestio, your mastermind, you're teaching others, you're learning yourself from your guests. Is it fulfilling? Is it a challenge? Is it just the fun learning experience? What are you getting out of it?
Yeah. Yes, on all fronts. Yes, on all fronts. And the podcast specifically has kind of led to like every business that I've had in the last like 3 years, like any sort of success that I've had, any sort of like money that I've made has all branched off of the podcast in some regard. Like something, I can almost point all of it back to having the show. So whether it's something I learned, a connection that I made, like the money that I raised for my software company came a lot from connections I made on the podcast. And like, there's so many things that stem from having the show that makes it worth my time, besides just like, oh, I make a few $1,000 a month off of it. You know what I mean? Like it's not, the money that I make off of it is not worth the time that I put into it, but everything else that I get out of it is worth the time that I put into it. So in fact, I probably am operating at a loss every year in my podcast. Like I don't make a ton of, like, I'm not pocketing money. Like I spend all the money just producing new content or traveling to places and interviewing people or getting more content done for my social sites or whatever. Like it's pretty much a wash for me at this point. But I'm happy to do it like that for another decade if I need to. You know what I mean? It's a good use of my time. Objectively, I think a good use of my time. So I will continue to do it into the distant future, as at least as of right now.
So for anyone who's thinking about starting a podcast, what are one or two or three things you would recommend they get started with first, or what are your recommendations?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, don't worry too much unless you have a lot of discretionary income or savings. Don't worry too much about equipment. Don't spend your money on stuff that doesn't really matter, is kind of what I tell people. Is like, I would rather you spend money on a coach than spend money on $4,000 worth of audio and video equipment. You just don't need it to produce something that people will give attention to. You do need to have good content, which is why I say like a coach is probably a better use of money, but like somebody that can help you produce better stuff that actually has meat in the content itself, whether it's comedy or business or like value or entertainment or some combination of those things. It's got to be good. So if you can invest with somebody who can help you make it good, that's probably a better use of your money than like buying a new computer or getting a nicer camera or a nicer lens for your camera or whatever. So focus more on information and education at the beginning than you do like equipment and gear and qualities. And then again, that's different advice if you already have a successful business or, spending $5,000 is inconsequential to you, then the answer to you is get a coach and get nice equipment. You know what I mean? But if you're starting with nothing like I was, cut corners on the stuff that you can cut corners on, and the equipment and gear and stuff to me is the place to cut corners on rather than the education from somebody who's been there, done that, and bought the t-shirt.
How about landing those great guests?
Yeah, landing the guests, man, is just it's just a long term. It's a commitment to the long term because it's always going to be a factor. It's like if you're going to interview people, landing good guests is really difficult at the beginning because nobody knows who you are. And I'm speaking from personal experience. When I started my show, it was the first thing I ever did online, so nobody knew who I was. So it was a very difficult lift for me to just like go get good guests. But luckily, I came from a door-to-door sales background, so rejection was just kind of part of my MO. And so like at the beginning, you're just going to face a lot of rejection. Like I sent a lot of DMs that were unanswered, a lot of DMs that maybe did get an answer, but it was somebody on their team. I got a lot of gatekeepers telling me no. I got a lot of people telling me no. I got a lot of people telling me not right now. Got a lot of people telling me come back when you reach X number of downloads, type of a thing. Like I had a lot of that stuff that was going on at the beginning. It's just a matter of sticking in the game long enough to see some of those no's turn into yeses and to start getting some of those big names to say yes. So the nice thing is like it's like a snowball that you're trying to push uphill first. Like it's really, really small and it's really difficult, and you're trying to move everything that direction. But then you get over to the other side and it starts rolling downhill. Well, now not only is it going faster, but it's getting bigger, and it's like doing that and you're trying to keep up with it. So now like a lot of like the bigger guests that I brought on have actually been people pitching their clients to me, like PR firms and stuff like that, pitching my show to bring their guests on my show. And some of them like, yeah, I'll definitely interview that person. Thank you. You know what I mean? So it's just like at the beginning, it's a heavy lift and it's going to be long-term. You're probably going to get a lot of rejection. Not everybody can be the one-hit wonders, or the overnight successes, because there are a couple examples of people like that. But if that's what you're shooting for, it's not repeatable or duplicatable. It's not like a process. It's like there's a ton of luck and timing that's involved with some of the way that those people were able to get the attention that they were able to get as early as they were able to get it. Like it's not the thing that you should rely on if you really want to build a good show. or else you're going to quit within 6 months, like most people do. 90% of podcasters will never make it to episode 10. So don't be one of those people. Commit to the long term and interview who you can interview right now. My first like 20, 30 interviews were just like people that I knew that happened to be in business. None of them were like independently wealthy. None of them were influencers or famous. It was just, but to be frank, if I interviewed one of those people at that time, I would have botched it. I wasn't a good interview. You know what I mean? I had reps to be good enough. Like people want the Joe Rogan guests without putting in 2,000 episodes like he did to get to the point where he's a good enough conversationalist to bring on Elon Musk and not sound like a dummy. You know what I mean? So part of it's like it's going to suck and it's going to take a long time, but good. Because if you got the opportunity right now, you would completely flail. Like you would completely butcher the opportunity because you're just not ready for the opportunity. You know what I mean?
That's those first few episodes. That's you making your bones, right? That's polishing up all the rough edges,
right?
Yeah, those episodes are supposed to suck.
Yes, exactly. Expect to suck. You're going to suck, and not only is that okay, it's expected. You know what I mean? Like it's not just like oh, that's okay. You're gonna suck. It's more like cool. Like you're it's the barrier to entry, I guess what I'm trying to say. Like it's not an option to suck or not suck. And like you might have an advantage, right? Like if you're coming from being a journalist or something, or you're coming from speaking on stages, it's like, yeah, you probably have an advantage. You're probably going to be better than other people, but it's still not going to be the best.
My first episode sucked too.
That's what I'm saying.
My latest episodes probably suck a little bit too, but
it's just a matter of like the degree of sucking, like how bad is it going to be and for how long, you know what I mean? But if you stick in it, even if you're not good at it, even if you have no natural communication ability, if you stick in it and you put in enough reps and you do a lot of those reps over a long enough period of time, you will be good one day. And when you're better, it's easier to land better guests. So now we have like a bunch of testimonials of guests that have come on that are prominent guests who've been on 1,000, 2,000 shows who are saying stuff like, Travis is in the top 1% of interviewers I've ever encountered, or like, Travis knows how to get really great stuff out of his people. So like, we'll take that and we'll send him out to guests that are prospective guests of the show to be like, hey, like you may not have heard of me before, but I promise I won't waste your time. You know what I mean? Like I prepare and I ask questions and I come with thoughtful insights. And I'm going to do my best to get the best out of you. And worst case scenario, you're going to walk away with a dozen social media clips that you and your team can use for your own content purposes. And who doesn't need more content? You know what I mean? So then they go see my stuff and find out that I've interviewed Shaquille O'Neal and Rob Dyrdek and Dane Cook and Paul Pierce and Matt Barnes, all these other people. Then they start going like, oh, you know what? Maybe it would be worth spending some time with Travis, even though maybe his audience isn't Joe Rogan's eyes. Yeah, sure. But like, most people don't care about the audience size. They just want to know that you're not going to waste their time, because busy people hate wasting their time more than they hate anything else. So if you happen to get somebody that's good on the show, and then you don't do a good job at hosting them or asking good questions or being thoughtful or prepared or any of those things, then probably you're not going to get a good chance with any of their friends. And they're probably not going to make any introductions to other people who they know who you might be able to interview. Like the buck stops at that person because you didn't put any work into making sure that person had a good time when they move. So yeah, a lot of work.
That you do. Yeah, just you mentioned Dane Cook. I remember Dane Cook putting out video podcasts before the iPhone was out. He's old school.
On MySpace, man. He was on MySpace back in the day. Yeah.
He actually was doing podcasts. I remember this when I didn't even know what a podcast was.
Yeah.
Like what is
when there was like
thing on my he was doing podcasts on actual iPods. But you did say earlier that you started off in the sales arena, and I remember when I was in college, I did a summer job. I was selling books door to door. And talk about going through your reps. Going through the gauntlet of knocking on doors.
Oh yeah,
in the hot summer months, and you gotta get through all the no's, get through all those defeats, so-called failures to get to the yes. right? And that's like the first episodes. You're getting through the no's, you're getting through the failures, you're learning from your mistakes, and you're getting better.
It's
You're doing the reps.
I recommend door to door to so many people for that exact reason, because it's not even just like good testing ground for sales or good a metaphor for podcasting. It's literally anything that you do. If you want to have outsized, oh, heard that one. If you want to have outsized success at anything that you do, rejection is part of the prescription.
Mm-hmm.
You don't grow thick skin and learn how to move from rejection to rejection to rejection without losing the enthusiasm that you had in the first one. You're going to struggle. Like you may not be able to make it through that gauntlet, because sometimes it sucks. And door to door is like such a constant version of.
You're keeping an eye on the goal, right? On the mission.
Yes.
And you gotta keep it in perspective. You're learning how to become a better podcaster, a better interviewer.
Yeah.
In fact, you created your own niche with interview marketing.
Mm-hmm.
You just got named a field all on your own. And what is interview marketing?
Yeah, it's easy to be the expert in something when you're the only one that knows it exists. You know what I mean? So, interview marketing is just kind of what I dubbed as doing what I do in terms of getting booked on podcasts and then interviewing people for your podcast. It's a way of getting to know more people and getting more people to know you without being pushy and salesy and like it's a lead generation activity. It's like a lead gen activity that's not really a lead gen activity. And especially if you're in a high ticket or high trust business, it can be a really great model that works for you. So, we've consulted some clients who they'll do 30 plus interviews a month, just because it's the best way that they found to meet with the people with whom they want to do business the most. So they'll just crank out interviews, because it's a great way to build relationships with people, a great way to get your foot in the door, and a great way to potentially bring leads into your business. The difference between like this and normal lead gen activity is like you can't treat it like lead gen. So if the person isn't interested, then I tell people like back off immediately. Don't put them in your CRM and send follow-up emails and hit them up about your services. It's like the primary objective has to be building the relationship. And if it happens to lead to a conversation that is more salesy, great. Then you like get permission to get them on a sale. That's what I always did. And that's what I tell people to do. It's like, get them on the interview, give a couple shout outs to your business, let them know what you do. And then if they're interested, set a sales call, but set that call for the purpose of being a sales call, and just be like, hey, look, that like this meeting is not what that is for. But let's, open our calendars and see if we can sync up on Tuesday. I'd be happy to chat through some of our services with you. At that point, like they're giving you permission to get them on a sales call, and then you can put them in the CRM. But like, sometimes the most difficult part, especially with people who are really busy, is just getting your foot in the door. And it's way easier to get your foot in the door for a podcast interview than it is to get your foot in the door for, a sales call, to be like, you might need help with this thing, like a random cold LinkedIn outreach type of a cold message. Like the odds of getting that person to get on a call are really, really, really low. But if you're like, hey, come on my podcast where I'm going to highlight you and cut up content for you and we're going to have a great conversation and blah, 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 then they're way more likely to say yes to that. You can build the relationship, and it may not lead to business this week or this month, but in 14 months from now, when it's top of mind for them, when they're like, oh, you know what, Travis had that podcast booking agency. I'm actually coming out with my book in 6 months, and my publisher told me to go on podcasts. Boom, I got a guy for that. Let me go talk to Travis, because now we have a relationship. That's why I say like it's interview marketing, because it's like, it's a different form of it. You have to look at it as a different marketing opportunity rather than like most like lead gen activities that are way more transactional. This is a more relational long-term build, but it also allows you to produce content for yourself, get better clips for your own social. Like there's a lot of other reasons to do it. Just happens to also fuel the pipeline in some way.
I like getting them on camera and cornering them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you'll take a call from me, say tomorrow?
I have had that experience with other people where like they got me on an interview, but it was so clear that they just wanted to sell me something. And it's an immediate, just like, right, well, get out of my inbox.
It's a turn on.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, well, you have to think, like, that's why I tell people, like, you have to think of it like a relationship. You cannot think of it like a lead gen activity. Like they are not jumping on the interview to buy your stuff. They're jumping on the interview because they think that you have a genuine interest in learning from their activities. So don't ask people to come on that you don't have a genuine interest in, so that you don't have to fake having a genuine interest in them. You know what I'm saying? Like, so there's some thought that has to go into it. Again, it's not just like, it's not spaghetti against the wall, cold lead gen where you're just like, oh, let's send out 100 automated LinkedIn DMs. And then you're interviewing people who you have zero interest in what they do or their story. And you have no desire to get to know them at all. The only thing you're trying to do the whole time is warm them up so that you can sell them something. That to me is just disingenuous, dishonest. Anybody worth their salt as an entrepreneur will see right through all that BS anyway. And it's just not going to be effective long-term. The only way that works is if you're dealing with like newbies, and then you're basically at that point, in my opinion, you're just being a scammer. Like you're presenting one thing and then you're giving them something else. And that to me is just like not the way I want to operate my business, and not the way that I teach people to operate theirs.
No, I love it. Travis, this conversation went in a direction I hadn't expected it. I really enjoyed this. If others want to hear more about you, connect with you, check out your podcast, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, travischappell.com is it's a great place you can just find all my stuff there, all my links to my socials, everything. I'm probably most active on Instagram at Travis Chappell, 2 P's, 2 L's, like CHAPPELL, travischappell.com, or at Travis Chappell on Instagram. Yeah, come say what's up.
Awesome. And we'll put all the links in the notes. I'm always jealous of somebody who's got their name in a .com, because somebody already wrapped up Aaron Hale.
Yeah,
drives me nuts.
I got to give a shout out to my dad on that one. He bought the domain name travischappell.com when I was in like elementary school, because he had enough foresight to see that was probably going to be a thing. So I got lucky.
Oh, they've proven to be a smarter man than me. Well, Travis, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate this. It was a great conversation. At least I enjoyed it. And it was great to reconnect after a few years.
Yeah, man, it's been a while. I'm always happy to hang out. This is a lot of fun. Anytime we can do another one, I'm happy to. And anytime I can get you back on the show, let's do it.
Love to. All right, Travis. Have a great one, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Sounds good.